Good afternoon. My name is Lucy Sandell, and I work with the Career Development Team here at the University of Chicago in Hyde Park. I'm delighted to welcome you to our webinar entitled, How Can We Prepare for Working Alongside Artificial Intelligence? The recording will be shared with all registrants in the next day or two. Today's speaker is Justin Adams. Justin is a graduate of the University of Chicago Booth School of Business and has an undergraduate degree from Wheaton College. He's also the founder of Digitize.AI, which is creating the digital workforce of the future. As an interesting note, Justin is also an amateur painter and clarinet player. It's my pleasure to hand over the controls to Justin.
Thanks, Lucy, and thank you everyone who joined. And really, I'm hoping that this will be a engaging and thoughtful discussion. This is a topic that I have some interest in, given the line of work I'm in and my background, and I'll go a little bit over that in a second. But really, I want this to be engaging, and so please, we'll answer questions at the end, but also type in questions as we go along, and Lucy will jump in and help ask those, because I really want this to be an engaging, two-sided dialogue, given the topic especially. So a little bit more about myself. After I graduated from Booth, joined a management consulting firm, ended up in a role where got exposed to artificial intelligence at PwC, and basically left and set up my own firm about 6 months ago to help clients along their journey around automation and AI. And it's certainly a topic that's a lot of buzzwords, a lot of hot topics, and companies are either just now starting to think about it, or they've been thinking about it for a while, but need some help in going about it. And usually the pattern we see happen quite a bit is companies try to go at it alone for a while, get stuck, and then need someone to call on and help them as they're thinking about creating the workforce of the future. And so that's what I want to talk a little bit about today, and specifically, how from a career standpoint can we prepare for that. And so, there's not a lot of, this is not meant to be an academic research presentation. I don't have a lot of academic research that I'm presenting. This is more experiential, and there's not going to be a lot of consensus around these thoughts or ideas, which is good, because I think that'll create dialogue and some good discussions. So without further ado, I think we're going to go to poll question number 1. And the question is, I am attending this webinar because 1, AI is a field that I'm interested in working. 2, I'm fearful of AI taking my job. Or 3, I watch a lot of sci-fi. And my guess is that a number of people might have multiple answers, but I guess we'll just pick the answer that best fits.
Great. So I'll close the poll and share the answers. So 75% of you are interested in working in AI. 6% of you are fearful, so that's good, small percentage. And 19% watch a lot of sci-fi.
Okay, good. That's a good cross section of folks. So hopefully we'll address all 3 of those. Maybe not the watching sci-fi as much, although we might hit on that a bit. But certainly, hopefully this is helpful as people think about moving into a career in this field. And then also, touching on, how much of this is going to take my job away. So the next slide, according to a McKinsey study, by 2030, 38 to 47% of current jobs in the U.S. will be automated. And it might be hard to read that graph. I'm not sure if you can blow it up on your screen or not. But basically what that graph is showing on the top x-axis are the different types of careers, and the y-axis is by sector. And so one of the things you can see is that if on the far right-hand side, if you're in job includes a lot of data collection or data processing, you're going to be hit especially hard by automation over the next, I guess, 12 to 13 years now. So one of the things I wanted to ask is, do folks, and it's not really a poll, so I don't know how we're going to do it, but if anyone has questions around the debate between, some of you may be aware, there's a pretty public debate going on right now between Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg. And Elon is calling AI an existential risk for human civilization, and Zuckerberg is taking the opposing view, primarily saying it's going to be a good thing for civilization. So it'd be interesting if people have questions around that and kind of where they tend to land on that spectrum of is AI going to be dangerous or is it going to be something that's good? But one of the things I wanted to point out with the slide, and I think there's a poll question addressing it coming up, is around if you think about the fear of jobs being automated. Really, I think what this graph helps show is that portions of jobs are going to be automated, and depending on the job, it's going to be a larger portion than others. But there probably won't be that many jobs, in my opinion, that are going to be fully automated away with AI. Now, 50, 60, 70% of the function might be, and you might be working a different way than you are today. But really, I think that 38, in my opinion, 38 to 47% quota current jobs being automated is more around 38 to 40%. 7% of tasks are going to be automated, and so it'll take away pieces and portions of people's jobs. But I'd be shocked in 12 years, if 50% of the jobs that exist today don't exist in 12 years. Now that number might be accurate if you're talking, a little further out, but again, that seems a little aggressive, in my opinion. But others might feel differently. I know some people think that, in 5 years, a lot bigger portion of jobs will be automated. And so it's one of those things, with AI, if you're familiar with the Gartner hype cycle, we're definitely at the peak, in my opinion, and we'll be in the trough of disillusionment probably in the next year. And then the real interesting use cases and applicability will come out of that. And so I certainly don't think it's hype. I think it's real. I wouldn't have started a company based on it if I think it was all hype. But there are certainly hype portions of it. And again, it's just because this AI gets lumped in with a lot of really specific use cases, and they get this umbrella term put on it, people lump it in. But when you start to parse out really the differences, the nuances between it, some are real and some are hype. So that leads me to my next question, which is around in the next 10 years, I think what percentage of my current job will be automated? Do you think number 1, 0 to 20%, number 2, 20 to 80%, or 3, 80% and more?
Okay, I'm going to close because people have been answering and share. So 60% believe that 0 to 20% of their job will be automated. 40% believe that 20 to 80% will be automated, and nobody thinks that 80% or more will be automated.
Those are interesting results. We may have a bit of a sampling bias given University of Chicago grads, because certainly in 10 years, there will be positions that will be more than 80% automated, and but I think that it's probably about a fair split between 0, 20, 50-50, and kind of 20 to 80. So that's some interesting results. So the next point I wanted to touch on is given that is what can we do to prepare. So it sounds like there's probably a few folks who think very little of their job will be automated, but I think that most people probably are aware enough at this point, to think a decade out that at least 5 plus 10% of their job will be automated. And I know this is an area that I've spent post business school thinking about, and how do we get ready? If you do believe this is going to be a huge transition and a force. I mean, I think my subtitle on this presentation was, Mark Andreessen talks about software eating the world, but I think AI is going to eat software. Certainly, some people say it's going to have more profound impact than the internet's had on the economy and jobs. And so, if you kind of are in that spectrum of belief, what can we do to prepare? And so, really, what I wanted to walk through was, 3 different thoughts and scenarios of how you might prepare. And so, scenario 1 involves staying in your current position. So, if you are in a company, let's say maybe you're worried that half your job might be automated at some point in the next decade. One of the ways, assuming you are where you are and you're not looking to move, is that you look for opportunities to get involved in automation activities within your company. So I can tell you firsthand, working with clients, both big and small, this is a topic that is starting to generate interest from the C-level, board level on down. And so there's a good chance that if your company is not already starting to think about it, will be in the next 12 months or so. And so one scenario is to kind of stay put but get involved in the automation activities within your company. So you become the change agent within the business and helping your firm adapt, and certainly being close to the activities is something that I think would be beneficial from a career perspective, longer term. Another scenario number 2, is to switch companies or sectors. So again, this is another way to position yourself. If you're in a company or position, you're like, what, these guys just don't get it. My company's not going to adapt or change quick enough. From a career perspective, I need to get out of here. Then you might start thinking about, what are the companies, other companies or companies in your industry that are kind of leading the way and thinking about this, and that might make sense to join longer term. And so as you think about that, my belief and prediction for advice for what it's worth is that thinking about the landscape of companies in the AI space in the future, I think you're going to have the large incumbents that have the huge AI resources and workforce, like the Googles and the Facebooks and Microsofts, who all have thousands and thousands of data scientists and engineers, and certainly they're going to be a huge player now and going into the future. And then I think you're going to have a lot of startups in the space, and they'll be doing some really interesting applications. And what I think is going to happen, though, is it's going to start creating a polarized effect where some of the so-called middle-sized, middle-class companies in these sectors are going to start to get gutted, and frankly, a lot of the legacy businesses are going to start getting disrupted quicker than management is probably prepared for. So if you are thinking about how best position, my idea is go big or go small. And from a company standpoint, the third scenario is to go back to school and retool, retrain yourself, and think about what are the skill sets going to be valuable in the future. And so this may mean official courses. This might mean online courses, and really kind of thinking about what are the skill sets I'm going to need and want, and then maybe this helps. Maybe scenario 3 is a precursor to scenario number 2 or scenario number 1. But anyways, just kind of three options there that I came up with. And so why don't I take a breath and pause and see if there's any questions that have come in.
There have. One of the questions is, how would you define AI? And a follow-up is, does it include robotics?
Yeah. So there's no industry consensus on this. How I define AI, I use that as a very broad brush, and I would put robotics under that. But certainly, so AI, it would include things like machine learning, deep learning, natural language processing, I've seen cases made for including robotics under that. Depends what type of robotics you're talking about. Some of the more basic RPA robotics is not officially AI, but it's kind of the building blocks, and then some of the stuff we do around intelligent automation and cognitive robotics does contain components of AI. So when I say AI, I'm just using a very broad brush to encompass all that. But certainly, like as I mentioned, it's very nuanced, and really understanding the difference, and if you're looking to make a career change in the field, you're going to want to know the differences and know what it is you want to focus on.
Great, thanks. Which industries do you think are going to see the biggest changes?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll start with industries I think you're seeing the biggest shifts in already and will continue. Certainly financial services. I think you look at the fintech landscape, the amount of innovation going into fintech right now is pretty large. I think you'll see a lot of innovation in things like transportation. Certainly, I mean, the impact of things like driverless cars really can't be, I think, overstated. The impact that's going to have on the economy as a whole. And then I think some of the laggards, but interesting use cases in the future are going to be around healthcare and energy, specifically utilities. And when you look at the size of some of the utilities right now, and the way the monopoly that they've been able to have, I just think you'll see a lot of disruption in these ecosystems that previously were more closed, right? And that's, you need data to be able to do AI, and so where you're seeing the most innovation right now is around areas where it's easier to get access to data. Laggards are where it's more of a closed ecosystem, and so at some point though that pull and that tidal wave is going to open up even the most closed ecosystem. And so when it does, and the floodgates break, so to speak, I think there'll be a ton of interesting things that happen there.
Great. And we've been collecting a lot of data over the last decade. So all that data is going to fuel, one would expect, the field of artificial intelligence. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you think about a decade ago, big data was all the rage and the buzz. I mean, and really the AI stuff, the only thing, I say only, I'm being a bit sarcastic here, but really, the main thing that's different today is just the computational power that we now have combined with the cloud. And so, the first decade of kind of collecting the big data and doing some interesting use cases. Now with the computing power and some of the modeling, certainly it just it builds on that, right? And so I forget the statistics about the amount of data created every day or week or month, but something like it. I'm not even quoted, but it's far it's far greater than all the years in mankind history combined, right? I mean, it's exponential. And so again, that's where having the capabilities to make sense of this mass amount of data is going to be so critical. To your point, Lucy.
Great. Okay. Why is data needed for AI to disrupt an existing field? Is AI pre-programmed statistical-based decision-making, or is AI really artificial cognition? Question posing, critical thinking, and analysis.
Yeah, it's a good question. So there's different types of AI. Certainly, it's not cognition today as you think about a human's cognition. When one side of the first part of that question was around kind of just the modeling, and really, some of the more basic AI, like some of the linear regression stuff, that really is techniques that have been around for decades and decades, right? And so that's certainly on one spectrum. But what's changed is around the machine learning, and that goes into the computational abilities of a program to basically train itself. And what happens is you basically get output, but the output, and you get answer. You need tons and tons of data, right? And you get an output, but you don't know. It's a black box right now on why you get the output you get. And so there's a lot of work being done and innovation in the field of peeling back that black box and understanding why you get the answers to the questions that you're asking today of the data. But currently, you don't know that in most cases. And so that's a field of study right now that's pretty hot, is can we basically understand why the computer's given us the answers that's given us.
Thank you. I think that's it for the questions for now. I'm sure people will be typing them in as they go along.
Great. Well, let's keep going then. So one of the things, so that leads me to poll question number 3. What should our kids do to prepare? So, one of the things I want to talk about, for those of us that have younger children like myself, or will have young kids, or have grandkids, or whatever stage you're at, really, how do we help them prepare to work alongside AI? So first answer is number 1, study computer science, become a technical expert, data scientist, so to speak. Number 2, study liberal arts, as we don't know what the future will hold. Or 3, something else.
Okay, so we have 30% respondents saying study computer science and become technical experts. Another 30 said study liberal arts. We don't know what the future will hold. And 40% said something else. If people want to type in what they think something else might be, go ahead and put it in the questions box, and we'll be able to read them out.
Yes, please. I was going to say the same thing. Please type in what that something else is. I'd be curious. And that's the interesting answers. It was a bit of a trick question because there's not, in my opinion, a right answer, right? I mean, I think this is something that's up for debate. How technical do you want to get versus, there's a lot of people who think, 5 years from now, developers, may be almost obsolete because the, software is going to be, coding itself. And so, in that instance, you just study liberal arts and kind of figure it out later in life. And so, like I said, there's different schools of thoughts, and certainly open for debate and discussion. And so I'd love to kind of hear what people's thoughts are on that, and something else.
Yep, we have answers. That's what I love
Okay.
about, sorry, I don't know what's going on, why I'm reverbing here, but that's what I love about UChicago participants. Not shy, and I love it. One person wrote liberal arts with a few computer science classes. Another person wrote there probably isn't one right answer. Another is in the set scenario choices for how to respond, wouldn't continuing to learn some retooling be necessary regardless of whether you stay or move on to a new job? Another one is work on complex problem solving, communications, and creativity. Learn how your skills can be augmented by AI. Our kids should go to UChicago, like that. And Booth is a smart choice. Love it.
Oh, good. Yeah, those are interesting. And certainly, I like the one about you know, the creativity in the softer side, and so you know, as computers are able to do more and more, there's always going to be a need, right, for creativity, and how to apply that and how to think about solving a problem. I mean, that's the one. That's certainly one of the things I loved about Booth was, you know, giving you a framework for how to think about problems, right? They're not trying to give you the right answers necessarily, but they're trying to help you have mental models and frameworks for how to think about, and that's something that, you know, you take with you for your entire life and career. So my opinion is, regardless if you study computer science or study liberal arts or do something else, loving, learning how to love learning, and learning how to think through problems are things that will always be useful to folks. So, all right, well, that's the end of my formal presentation, and just wanted to use the rest of the time here to answer questions, and we can take this in whatever direction people find the most helpful. I just want to be able to use this time for what, you know, folks find interesting or helpful.
Great. Someone wrote, on a serious note, they think that it's important for our kids to learn to ask good questions, and I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah, and that's certainly part of that love of learning, right? Is continuing to ask questions. I mean, I think the why, the why question is a critical one to always be asking throughout life.
What drew you to this field?
That's a good question. So early in my career, before business school, I worked for the government, doing a lot of intelligence work, and got exposed to kind of big data. For those of you from the call familiar with Palantir, it's a valued at $20 billion kind of tech startup that uses big data. I was one of the first people to ever use that product, and so I think, you know, between econ undergrad and then kind of using that early on in my career, just seeing the power of data and how it can be applied, and certainly that's that kind of that theme and that love of data and the applications of that data, and then really just the combination of the hard sciences as well as the softer side of how to apply it, and certainly I have a chief technology officer. I'm not the one training the models, you know, for the robot, so to speak. So that's not I took Python classes to teach myself how to code, just so I could communicate at a high level. But quickly realized that that's not my best use of skills, and so I think just, you know, being you know, curious, asking questions, and then finding opportunities. I mean, at PwC, I really started an organization from scratch, pretty much based on just curiosity and kind of asking questions around this, and fell backwards almost into this stuff. And so I can't, you know, overstate that sense of curiosity and how important that is.
Great. Next question is, what does your startup company want to do?
Yeah, so we our startup company, we help basically firms right now, usually at a high level, usually kind of a C-suite level, put together plans and execute on their automation journey. So if you work at a company and you believe that believe that this stuff's going to really have the impact that most people do, it's going to have serious implications for your firm, for any existing firm, right? And so we help put together plans and then put in place things like some AI applications and robotics to help automate in the areas where it makes sense, and really start to lay the foundation for firms as they go on. A lot of firms have chief digital officers. I think that in the next year or two, you're going to start seeing chief AI officers as the importance of this stuff continues to unfold. And so that's really our vision, is to help companies realize the impact of this and benefit from it. And then, as we work with companies side by side, we're also developing products that are useful. And so the vision for our company is that we will always have a services arm, but we transition into more of a products company as we work on real life problems and applications, rather than, one of the things I see in the space sometimes is people sit in a garage or a basement for a couple months, create a really killer app, and then pop their heads up and say, hey, who wants this? And have to kind of find a market for it. And that just kind of seemed like a bit of a backwards approach to me. And so really working hand in hand with companies and on real life problems is what we do and what excites me as a company.
Great, thanks. Next question. Which functional areas or types of jobs among those typically held by middle to upper management professionals do you believe are or will be reinvented, first owing to AI use?
It's interesting. That's a very interesting question, and it really depends on the organization and the industry. But certainly I have a slide in one of my overview decks that shows the impact across all the functions, from IT to HR to finance to, I have a bunch of other ones in there, but it really is going to have an impact, and it'd be in different ways. But I see a lot of activity right now in the CFO function, because certainly there's a ton of processes in there that traditionally are manual, similar with HR, and so it's somewhat organizationally dependent and based on an organization's maturity level. Obviously, every organization has different maturities across the functions, so that's part of it, and then really what they're trying to where they're trying to tackle. And then, the other thing too that's interesting is that it's not just a pure automation play. That if done right, you're really building new capabilities as an organization. And so this is not just a cost savings exercise, but primarily, should be done right, a revenue generating one, as you unleash capacity within an organization or build applications that help you capture new business.
Okay. We have a question. What classes or courses would you recommend for a career in AI, and should she be coding? Should she learn coding?
Yeah, I think learning coding doesn't hurt. Again, if I did it myself, I took Python courses just to have a understanding of being able to go a level deeper. So I think it does not hurt. In terms of courses to take, I'm a big fan of liberal arts and just thinking interdisciplinary about these issues. And so there are, if you want to learn specifically on, let's say, deep learning, there are tons of, you can go to Coursera or online, massive online courses, right, that are popping up all over the place. So you can, get specific expertise in any one of these, sub AI areas. And so if I was new to this and was looking to make a transition, that's what I would probably do, is pick a subsection and go deeper in one area, rather than try to be a generalist across all the areas. Because when you start to get down to brass tacks and implement things, you have to be an expert in a specific area, and certainly that companies are going to value that more and more.
Great. And what you mentioned about liberal arts dovetails nicely into this this next question. Where do you see AI intersecting with the humanities? Or perhaps more importantly, where do you see the possibility for humanities specialists to advise in the AI community?
Humanities specialist. That's an interesting question. I mean, there's going to be there's going to be so many applications that we can't even think of, right? I mean, it was when the internet started and you had dial-up, and you had a few landing pages, and that was it, right? And the whole ecosystem has developed. No one could have certainly predicted. And so it's going to be similar, I think, with AI and the humanities. Certainly it's going to be, the one thing it's going to do in the humanities, in my opinion, is it's going to make data commoditized, and so certainly you'll be able to find answers to specific things much quicker, and it'll be able to predict whether it's playing music or reading a book. Already computers are able to paint. You can teach a computer to paint, and it can paint a painting so good it's on par with a masterpiece painter. So I think the value is going to be generated in how do you apply this cross-disciplinary in ways that affect everyone's life. And we haven't even talked about, you have other major trends like augmented reality and Internet of Things, and these are all kind of implantable brain chips, and the stuff seems far-fetched, but it's really not, and it's going to be real in the next decade. And so it's going to all interact, right? So none of this is going to be in a silo. And so the AI application with augmented reality in the humanities, and how that interacts with your Internet of Things devices at home, I can't even begin to speculate on what that's going to look like, or what that application is, but that's going to be the characteristics of what something in the future is going to be like, in my opinion.
Great. How would you recommend an established company to organize an effort to seek ways to embrace AI to reinvent jobs?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it depends on the company, it depends on the industry. Certainly, in my opinion, you need top-level leadership sponsorship. And if your decision makers don't get it, don't understand it, you're going to be fighting an uphill battle. But assuming you have that, then putting in place basically a two-pronged approach. And I actually just wrote an article that can be published in a couple of days on this topic. But the two common mistakes I see companies making in this space, one is they realize it's an issue, they realize it's a threat, and they take what I call a spaghetti approach and just throw money at a wall, and see what sticks. And I've unfortunately, I have stories that I've seen companies, spending $50–100 million with zero ROI. At least they're trying something, but they don't know what they're trying to do. The other approach I call the ostrich approach, and that's the stick your head in the sand and hope this thing goes away. And obviously I'm biased, but I don't think that's going to be a very effective long-term approach either. And so I think taking an approach where you need to get what I call the blocking and tackling done. You need to build a foundation of digitizing your, hence digitize the name of the company, but digitizing the company foundationally, and then building AI applications on top of that, and moving up that growth curve. Rather, it's more of a crawl, walk, run approach rather than just try and jump straight to running, because that's where you get that spaghetti approach. So it's a little high level because I'm not talking about a specific company, but hopefully that's helpful.
Okay. What are high-level advantages of AI?
I mean, certainly the insights, right? I mean, that's one of the things I harp on when I talk to folks and talk to clients is, what's the business problem you're trying to solve? Start with that. AI is cool and all, but again, you don't want to give your IT team a bunch of money and tell them to go figure something out, because what they come back with, unless you're a Google or a Microsoft, it's probably not going to be that applicable, right? You need to give them, business leaders need to give them the business problem they're trying to solve, and starting with that. And I think that's really the big advantage. And really, I think very quickly in the next 3 years, the speed to market, all the advantages that kind of come with being able to solve these problems quicker. Companies that don't have this capability in embedded, they're going to be driven out of the market very rapidly. And it's kind of going back to my barbell analogy earlier. You're going to have either the big players coming downstream in an industry and gobbling companies up that haven't embraced AI, or a smaller firm, startup is going to come and gobble up market share. And so I really do, the companies that are going to make it for the next decade or so need to start thinking about this stuff seriously now. And otherwise, I think you're going to have a real threat on both sides of you.
Thanks. Where do you believe AI has the greatest potential? In reinventing business processes or in automating manufacturing?
Both. I know that wasn't the question. I mean, certainly the automated manufacturing, I mean, that's done already. I mean, the large part, I mean, you look at a lot of the new, car manufacturing plants, it's pretty much completely robotics doing that, and certainly with driverless cars, going to continue to push that frontier. And so I think that's more mature. I think around the business process, I mean, you think of how many companies and how many, I guess I live this day in and day out, but I mean, there are so many processes within an organization that have developed, and you can't, there's not a silver bullet. That's the other thing I should have mentioned. You can't take a generic whatever, and this is where companies get in trouble, is they'll buy some off-the-shelf product, think they can put it in their environment, it's going to work. It can't by definition, because every organization's processes are unique to that organization. And so the potential is huge, but it is going to be a journey of doing the blocking and tackling. And so I think that's the longer term biggest potential, but it's also going to take the longest, because you have to do the blocking and tackling. If you're throwing the Hail Marys right now, you're not going to be successful if you haven't invested in kind of that football analogy, that good offensive and defensive line.
Okay. This is referring back to something that you said earlier in the presentation. Why do you believe Musk sees AI as an existential threat to humans, and how do you see it? Well, assuming since you work in it.
Yeah, no, I mean, Musk sees it, kind of, singularity event where essentially AI starts to think for itself, and those of you who've seen sci-fi movies, basically becomes our overlords. And he also thinks a few bad actors. His fear is that the power of this stuff will be in the hands of a few bad actors, whether it's a country or a terrorist group or whatnot. But essentially, these applications are going to be so powerful that it's going to be used for harm against the human race, either the AI attacking the humans themselves or a bad actor utilizing that. And so I guess the way I view it, it's like any technology, right? Any technology, any weapons, it could be used for bad, it could be used for good. It's how it's applied. But certainly debate and thinking about this is really important. And one of the areas I have a lot of interest in, and you're starting to see some evolution in it, but not a lot. And maybe this goes back to the humanities question: is I'd love to see more of an industry, developed around kind of the ethics of AI. And Cambridge has an institute that does some thinking in this area. But certainly, the moral and ethical responsibilities of this technology, while similar to, like I said, a nuclear weapon, for example, right? It could be a deterrent. It could be a really bad thing in the wrong hands. I think it's similar. So that's kind of how I view it. I don't view it as good or bad. I think it's a tool, and it's how that tool is applied. Certainly, the more thought and debate and that goes on around that, I think is healthy for this field.
Right. And there was a question about, would you be able to share the link at some point? Obviously after for that article. I guess.
Which article?
I guess I'm assuming it's the article Musk versus Zuckerberg, maybe? I can't remember, sorry.
Yeah, if that's what it is, I'll certainly share that. And if someone has a clarification on another article, let me know.
Yeah, it says the article he wrote a couple of days ago.
Oh, yeah, that one, that's being published in the next couple of days. Feel free to, if you want to link in to me after this or whatever, I post those on LinkedIn. I'm also trying to blog a little bit on our website. I'm not very good about that. But I can share that, Lucy, with you, and that's published, and if you want to send that out, however that works.
Great. Yeah, no problem. So, well, we're coming.
Lucy, I lost you. You still there?
Sorry, I clicked on mute. Pardon me. I need a little artificial intelligence right here, keeping me from clicking the mute button when I'm actually speaking to you. We've got about 5 more minutes. Do you still have time for questions?
Sure.
Okay, cool. Do you see AI making decisions, and in what hierarchy? Where would you draw the line between decisions AI would make versus people?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I already have AI applications making decisions in companies. So the answer is yes. They make decisions. And the question around kind of what they should do versus what a human should decide is a good one, right? And so it's for really up to the organization, right, and their comfort level and based on a process. But I'll give you a concrete example. So we have an application running in an organization where previously you had a payroll coordinator approving, having to go through a number of steps in approving people's pay, and they have to do verification and looking to make sure that they were eligible to get paid. So what we have now is we have a robot basically that's doing that, and if it's below a certain dollar amount, the automation approves that pay. A human never touches it or intervenes. It goes right into their bank account. Now, if it's a dollar amount that's kind of what the organization said, yeah, this is a dollar amount, above, we want to look at it, have a human intervene and before it leaves before it's paid out, it hands that back to the person. The person gets a email in their email box saying, hey, check out this payment. It's above this amount, and then they go in and they have human intervention. So that's a real world example that we're doing right now.
That was great. I love the real world example. Do you have another one by any chance?
I have a ton. You have any specific categories or areas that you're interested in?
No, whatever sounds cool to you.
Well, since the University of Chicago broadcast, we're working with a higher education institution, and we are helping them automate their entire student and employee onboarding process in HR. And so right now, as with most schools, it's pretty manual, the steps and departments that have to be done, and we're basically helping them. So the data that goes into their ERP system and comes out of it, rather than be manually entered and extracted, we're automating about 6 or 7 steps processes for this university.
That's terrific, because onboarding can be really one of these haphazard type of activities where some people are really good at it, some people are not so good at it, and you want people to have a good experience, and everybody have the same experience, right?
Absolutely. Who wants a new student or a new faculty member to have their name misspelled on an offer letter, or have a dollar amount not get paid their first paycheck, right?
Agreed. Yeah, and we've seen that happen everywhere. So that's wonderful. It's so good to hear that, and I like the fact that you were talking about ethics and AI, because I'm a big well, the show's not on anymore, but Battlestar Galactica fan, even though the Cylons creep me out. So that's great. And I want to thank everybody for participating. Oh, there was a question here. What is the difference between RPA and AI?
So RPA is robotic process automation, and it's another broad term. It can mean a lot of different things. But at a high level, that is a piece of software that automates tasks that basically have to follow a decision tree. So you can automate pretty complex tasks with that, but it's still more rules-based. AI will use more unstructured data to make decisions off of versus kind of a rules-based decision tree. So very quickly, very high level, those are the differences. Lucy, you on mute again?
All right. I know that there are still questions out there. We're coming up to the very end of our time, because I actually use a conference room that's, people are waiting to use in the next 5 minutes. So I want to thank everybody for staying on. 90% of you who joined us at the beginning are still here, so I really appreciate it. I want to thank Justin so much for answering so many questions, and for giving a great presentation. It was awesome. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Just let everybody know that November is Career Month. We're offering 16 webinars in 30 days on topics varying from career transitions to job skills to different industries. And I just want to make sure that everybody knows about it. So I'll be sending out a link to the upcoming events. Thank you so much again for participating. Thanks, Justin. And I'll hopefully talk to you all soon. Take care. Bye.